Welcome to Positivity Rocks, the podcast for all your mindset needs. I am David Baker and I'm your host. With me this episode, I have Thomas Brosnan, who runs thought-based therapy. He helps people with addictions, anger management, and depression, just to name a few things. So, Thomas, welcome.
Hi, David. You're right.
I am absolutely awesome, outstanding. I like to say, that's how I want to live my life. I want to live my life outstanding. So, some days I do, some days I don't. As long as I say it, that's the main thing. So, I got you up early today, right?
Yeah, early enough. So thank you for that. It's a pleasure to be here as well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. I've been wanting to talk to you for quite a while. We met on Clubhouse and we've had a few interactions, and I've always found you very fascinating, what you talk about and where you come from, because I believe that we've got a very similar sort of approach to things. It's how it sounds to me anyway. So how about you tell us a little bit about you and how you got into the field you're in?
So I got into the field I'm in terms of therapy. I progressed my career from being a teacher. I was a teacher for about near on 20 years. And I knew that there was more that I could do to help young people beyond the classroom. In my own kind of career, in my own teaching career, I just kind of felt like I'd done everything I could. I developed curriculums for City and Guilds, for Pearsons who write BTECs. I'd been the head of department, I'd been the head of a training centre that we set up as well. And I just felt quite accomplished in teaching. And I was like, I need to do something else now. I really do. So in terms of me evolving, growing, developing, I just knew that there was more I could do to help young people beyond the classroom. And I was going through a little bit of a difficult time myself, personally, in a very kind of toxic relationship, which I came out of. And that's where everything just came to that head for me. I knew that I could be more. I knew that I wanted to do more, but I didn't know what that was. So when I came out of this relationship, I had lots of curiosities. I was wondering, I had questions. And as an educator, I've always been like a lover of learning, a lifelong student. So I set about trying to find answers to these questions. And that's what led me, long story short, that's what led me to undertaking a master's in addiction psychology and counselling. And as part of that, I had to do a placement for 2 years. And I spent a year in the Priory, North London, and I spent another year working with the NHS, who I still support. And when I was on my placement, I was like, you know what, this is it. This is what I want to do, because I'm still working with people. But I never wanted to step away from helping young people as well. So I was like, all right, so if I'm learning all of these skills to help that adult kind of community, how can I then do something which is going to benefit the young people that I work with? So that's how I kind of, got to where I am.
That's also, I understand that. I mean, you coming from a teaching background. Me, when I lived in the States, I was coaching youth football.
Yeah.
So I already had that mentor in me, but I didn't have that as a full-time career, and it was I was still going through depression and anxiety back then, and it wasn't until I actually beat those problems, I'm like, okay, where do I take this now? What do I do with this? And that's where coaching just went, that's obvious, that's the path I need to go down, because I love to help other people. I love more than anything in the world is that moment when somebody looks at you and you just see it in their eyes, the I get it moment.
Oh man, I was just thinking that.
That moment when the penny drops.
Yeah.
And that is priceless. That is absolutely priceless. The moment where they go from I can't do this to wait, I know how to do this. That is why I do what I do. Why, for that moment, for that one moment, because you see the physical change, and that's I'm very grateful for that moment when I get it. And you talked about addictions a little bit there. I mean, I don't know if you remember me talking about this, but I used to be an alcoholic as well.
Okay.
And I know for me, it was a case of I had to stop being an alcoholic,
Yeah.
because I was causing permanent damage internally. Now, for you, when you're dealing with people, do you, how do you go about with the mindset of getting them, people to come away from their addictions, to move away, to think differently before they get to the stage where we're like, I've got to do this, otherwise it's going to cause permanent damage?
Okay. So the first thing for me, David, is just to say, congratulations and well done for moving, transcending from where you were to where you are now. How long have you been sober, if you don't mind me asking?
It's been 3.5 years.
Wow, well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
It it's, I I really don't know. Looking back at my life, I don't know why I drunk. Apart from the fact that I was covering up all my other issues. I just drunk to wear a mask.
Mm.
I do not miss it one bit slightly. It's it's something. It's a lot cheaper not being an alcoholic. I tell you, right?
It is, yeah. Not just financially either, but emotionally, spiritually, psychologically.
My life is so much better. My life
Yeah.
is so much better because I took the bull by the horn. I mean, because I was causing major damage to my esophagus because I was also taking pain pills as well,
Okay.
to cover up. I thought my knee hurt, so I thought I needed to take pain pills. And of course the damage that causes to the linings in here in the esophagus was that. I mean, basically, I collapsed in a bar and nearly didn't make it out of that night. So it was a real huge wake up call.
Mm.
Got to stop. And to be honest, I found it fairly easy to change because I had no choice. It was, if you want to carry on living, which I did because I was, changing my mindset on my depression and anxiety as well. I realized that I am better than this. I am going to live a good life and have a good future because I wanted to, because I was drifting through life. Heard a lot of talk about the book Outwitting the Devil. I mean, I was the one who was drifting, and now I've got a purpose, and I think that's key for a lot of people, is finding their purpose, finding their goal, finding their why. Because a lot of people are drifting. Is that what you find in what you do?
Yeah, and the reason why, I mean, look, we all drift, right? And it's what I refer to as like going off track. And we all do it, but it's being aware of the fact that we're doing it, because sometimes we do things implicitly, not knowing, and then we're like, oh my God, how did I get here? Even when we're driving down the road, we might like just get to the end of the street and think like, oh my God, like, did I just go through those lights? Like, were they red? Were they green? Like, oh my God, do you know what I mean? We lose ourselves in the moment because we wander, we drift. I get that. But the reason why I asked about, your time spent abstinent is because fundamentally it's about awareness. Like you said, like, I don't know why I drank, but then you just gave me a beautiful kind of explanation about how you drank to cover up, etc., etc. So you know why you drank, to cover up, simply there. And like Gabor Mate talks about, he doesn't ask why the addiction, but where's the pain? So if we're covering something up, what are we not wanting to feel? Because when we drink to those excessive levels, we're not drinking to get high or drunk, we're drinking not to feel. So what is it that we're covering up in those moments that may not be aware to us what we're doing? So this is where, for me, the way I work with people, those first 4 weeks is all about the awareness, bringing awareness to the fact of what you're doing, because you might not realize what you're actually doing. But the fact that you're here talking to me tells me something that you know about your situation, that it's got to that point of crisis where something needs to change. And for many people, things do change because, like you said, David, it's life or death. It's about people really appreciating what their priorities are. You know, what do you prioritize in life? Because the way I see it, and I speak from Ike, and I can only speak for me here. So I am the most important person in my life. All right. If I'm not breathing, then like people around me, like i.e. my daughters, then they're not going to get the best of me. If I'm short of breath, they're not going to get the best of me. So I need to make sure that I'm in the best possible position, not only to be able to listen to myself and to serve myself, but then to be able to support the other people around me, whether they're my children, like my sisters, like my nephew, my niece, who's no longer with us anymore because she took her own life about 18 months ago. So I need to know that I'm in that shape. So I am my own priority. I am the person that I need to be. And that's what, for me, David, I had to have that awareness about myself. And a lot has changed in my life because a lot had to change. So it's my methodology that I now practice. Yeah. So I basically practice what I preach. And this is where, for me, having a thought-based approach to therapy is very, you know, I'll use the word respectfully disruptive, yet it peacefully sits alongside, you know, traditional methods for abstinence or to abstinence or for recovery, like 12-step, like smart recovery. So I'm not coming from a faith-based position. I'm not coming from a scientific position like smart, but I'm coming from a more of a natural, more kind of thought-based premise that I believe as human beings, we are powerful. We're not powerless. We have found something in the moment that helps us to cope with whatever situation, whatever existential crisis we find ourselves in, albeit one that's inhibited our full emotional expression because we're not 100% expressing what's actually happening because we're covering it up. But we found a way of coping, and that will get us so far. Like what Pete talks about, what has got us this far will not get us that far. Do you know what I mean? So this is where, like, I use the example, like, you know, somebody could, let's say, be on a camping trip or on a hike, and they are miles from anywhere. They've hurt themselves. They've maybe broken their leg or fallen and damaged their arm. So they've made a makeshift spleen with whatever twigs, wood they can find in the environment. They've bandaged it up with whatever tissue, jumper, towel, whatever. And they've used that as a means of support until they can get to a place where they can get more effective, more sustainable help. Yeah. And that's what I see when people reach out to a substance or a behavior, because addictions aren't just physical, you know, they can be psychological as well. So we're talking behavioral, gambling, food, exercise, we're talking drugs, alcohol, you know, whatever. So whatever that person has found in the moment, they are powerful in that moment to think in that divergent way, not to sit there and suffer. You know, they know that they are in need of repair. And this is where I differ between rock bottom and repair. You know, if we think about when somebody hits rock bottom, quote unquote, it's a very kind of bandied around term. But if we think about the metaphor of that, for me, somebody who's hit rock bottom is that person who's lying on the floor, destitute, spread-eagled, like literally, you know, can't do anything, can't go anywhere. They're just done. There is literally at no point how can they see themselves getting back up and coming back to a way of life. But for me, I prefer to look at it as a position of like, we're broken down. But when we're broken down, sometimes, right, we can call the AA if we've got membership, and we can get that person out, that aid, that support person, that power greater than ourselves to come and help us on our way. But sometimes, going back to my analogy of like being out, you know, on a hike or something, sometimes there aren't any other people around, you know, there's no one there. So we've got to help ourselves. So in that moment, we're powerful. We're not powerless. You know, sometimes if the AA man's going to say like, they're going to be 4 hours, you know what, I need to do something here. I can't wait 4 hours. So it's not about the resources we have, but it's about how resourceful we actually are. And when in those moments we can dig deep enough to demonstrate our resilience to get us through. So again, we're demonstrating our power in that moment. So when we reach that point, like I said, we might have bandaged ourselves up, got to where we need to get to, and then we can get some help. That's like the point of a person coming to therapy. Drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, has got them that far, but now they've reached that point of like crisis, let's say, when it's not serving them anymore. They need to get more professional help, and that's where I come in, is to be able to work with that person, to give them the awareness to like, to basically understand that you're not powerless, you're powerful. Look at everything you've done that's got you here. Like, okay, someone else's opinion is not your reality. Just because someone else says you are, it doesn't mean you are. If you're attaching to a label of being an addict, then you'll never be anything more than that, because you'll only see yourself as that. So for me, it's about empowering people to understand that they are more than they think they are. They can be more than they think they can be. So where Simon Sinek talks about the why, know your why, for me, it's deeper than that. And like Pete said the other week, it's about who you are becoming. So for me, it's not about knowing your why, it's knowing who you can become. Do you know what I mean? So where Simon Sinek draws those 3 circles, I put another one in there, the 4th one, and that's the who. And this is what I love about Clubhouse and our conversations. They're so empowering, they're so enriching. It's what we can take from the conversations and how we can kind of see something in our own mind to then produce something that's going to help someone else. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it's coming back to answer your question, it's all about awareness. The more we know ourselves, all right, the more we can understand ourselves. The more we can understand, the more we can accept. The more we can accept, right, that's how it is, this is what I'm going to do. That's then where we get our plan. And then the next 4 weeks when I work with somebody is all about the ability. So we have the awareness, we have the ability, knowing that we can do more, knowing that we can be more. And then in the kind of next 4 weeks, because typically I work for somebody for about 12 weeks intensively, the next 4 weeks is all about the autonomy, is all about the mastery. So essentially, David, you know, in short, it's learning to swim again. It's learning to walk again. It's learning to ride that bicycle again, you know. So that's where I'm coming at, and how I get people to really think about their mindset is all through that process of awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you speak and I'm smiling because I recognize so much of myself in what you said.
Okay.
You know, it was just like, oh, I remember that moment. I remember that moment. Because for me, you know, the mindset is very much the whole airplane airbag thing. Put your own one on first.
Yeah.
Look after yourself first. You know, yeah, helping, you know, because I tried to take my own life, and obviously it didn't work because I'm sitting here speaking to you, and that was my rock bottom moment.
Yeah.
And I realized I needed help, but I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to talk to, and therapy, to be honest, never worked for me in the past. So I knew that what I had to do was to find my own way. I had to find what worked for me. And it was, you know, I put myself on a mission to find the answers. And, you know, I wasn't a wealthy man, so I found most of my answers on YouTube. You know, I found the ones I liked, I discarded the ones I didn't like. And it, you know, as it occurred to me, it was my depression I created. I formed it. It was like something I made out of clay. I made this depression. It took me 30 years and it was a work of art. Okay. And I knew if I found my own way into that maze, I had to find my own way out. And the way I go coaching now is I know that everybody's depression, anxiety, their problems, they're their own. They created those issues. They created those problems. You know, whatever trauma it was that put them down that path, that was the base. But they created everything else that followed that through their choices, through their habits, through whatever it is, the way they led their life. So when I'm helping people, I want to help them find their own way. I want them to find what works for them, because we are all individuals. We are all, you know, we all have separate thoughts. You know, not one thing will work for one person. You know, we can't all clump together into one group, you know, and that's one of the things that always annoys me when people first go to the doctors. You know, here are these antidepressants, and yes, okay, they're there to balance you out, but they don't solve the issue. They're there. Again, it's another form of a mask. So I always say, you know, take the antidepressants, but work out what the root cause is. Work out why. What is your, why are you thinking these ways? Why are you thinking these thoughts? What can we do to move you away from that? What will work for you? Because I know, and you probably come across this a lot of the time when you speak to people.
Yeah.
I know I would always find that when I was suffering from depression, when somebody told me great advice, which you're giving out and which I'm giving out now, it would go in one ear and out the other, because you don't think that's the answer.
No.
Your mindset isn't there, isn't ready to hear the answers. So what would you say to somebody to like give them that light bulb moment, I guess, that this actually is the answer? This is the way to change that mindset.
Okay. So the first thing that's come into my mind is like, you know, we can't make someone see something. We can't change a person, a place, or a thing. The only thing we can do is change our attitude towards them or it. So if we really want them to see something that we've seen that's helped us, we can't. They have to be able to see it in their own time. So like you talk about there, if we're sharing something with somebody and they're not seeing it, it's going in one ear and out the other. For me, the answer is simple. Their mind is closed. It's not working, right? I had an insight the other day, and it's interesting you should mention this now, because when our mind is closed, like I said, it doesn't work. It's like a parachute, right? Our mind only works when it's open. If our mind is not open, we're not going to hear something. Just the same way that if a parachute doesn't open, what are we going to do?
We are plummeting.
Right. And then what happens then?
Well, it depends on what you hit, but it could be bad.
So if you compare that now to our mind, if our mind doesn't open, what are we doing?
If our mind doesn't, we are staying exactly where we are. We are not ready to change.
No.
You know, and that's the thing. If somebody's not willing to change or not ready to change, but they know they need to, I mean, how do we, I mean,
Well, sometimes people might not know that they need to. So this is what I'm saying, David. Like, if our mind is open, if our mind is closed, we're essentially plummeting.
mm-hmm.
We're in that spiral of self-sabotage, self-destruction. You know, nothing anyone says or does is going to be taken with a pinch of salt, because in that moment, we are so closed-minded that we're not open to anything. The answers could be there, staring us straight in the face, but we're blind to the fact because we have an obsession almost. And the obsession is a thought at the exclusion of all else. Our mind is not on anything else other than the fact that I'm not good enough, I'm this, I'm that. We're in that drama triangle. We're in that mode of victim. We're persecuting. You know, we're looking to rescue ourselves. It doesn't matter what anyone else says or does, it's not going to happen. So how do we shift people from victim to creator? How do we shift people to see themselves as, you know, a coach rather than a rescuer? How do we get people to see themselves as a challenger, you know, rather than a persecutor? And a lot of it has to do with language as well, really thinking about the narrative that somebody's having, you know, really getting them to think about, well, why are you, you know, choosing these types of words to describe yourself? Why are you choosing these types of words to describe your environment? Like, who are you becoming if you continue to do and speak in this way, versus who could you become if you choose not to? So it's a really gentle exploration. It's a really, you know, delicate process that I go on with somebody. It's a journey, because I get people to think about their future self as well. And, you know, I don't know if you've done Pete's Kickstart program.
Oh, yes.
Right. So I'm working my way through it. All right. And this is what I love about the synergy between Pete and I. There's just like this unconscious, like we knew each other before we met each other. I'm 100% certain of that. And I believe that in life. There's certain people, and we go through life thinking, like, we meet someone like, I feel like I've met you before. You know, we know people before we met them. I'm certain on that fact. And a lot of what Pete talks about in his program, I'm already doing. And I do that, especially when it comes to the future self. Because I use an example, like you could be in a room, you could be in a shopping mall, you could be in a club, wherever, and you see this person and you're like, I know them. And it's like, no, that can't be them. You're like, no, and you start having a conversation with yourself. Do you know what I mean? And you walk up to this person and it's like, no, it's them. The closer you get, the more familiar they become. And then they turn around and they look at you and you look at them and they're like, and I'm like, who do you think this person is? And they're like, it's me, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, but that's you in 5 years' time. So if your 5-year self is looking at yourself now in your depressed, kind of debilitated state, what would they say to you? What would they mean to you? You know, and then the person I'm working with is like literally jaw-dropping, like, and they're just like glancing ahead, like they're literally there. And they're like, wow. And the message they hear from their future self is the catalyst that they need there and then in that moment to know that they need to do something, because something needs to change. Because if they don't, then we come back to that question. If nothing changes, then nothing changes. But if something changes, everything changes. So who am I becoming if I stay on that road? Who am I becoming if I go down this road? So there we talk about choice. And this is what I say, David, it's all about that awareness and how that awareness encapsulates a person's position to give them the kind of the insight, that sight from within, for them to know where they need to go. So that's where the light bulb comes into it. We have to create the space, okay? We have to create that space which is safe enough and trusting enough, you know, where they want to come into, where they feel welcome, where they feel held, where they feel warm enough to go to that place in their mind where it will open. And they can then just gently, kind of effortlessly, you know, stabilize themselves in the air, you know, and they can see the landscape around them and how beautiful it is and what they have at their kind of disposal to enjoy, to embrace, to live within. And as they gently come down, then, if we're thinking about continuing the metaphor of the parachute and the skydive, as they come down to earth and their feet land, that's when we've got them grounded. And that's where we can really, you know, feel the warm embrace. That's where we and you and many other people as coaches and therapists, you know, really do the work that we do to enable people to feel empowered, you know, not powerless. You know, Churchill talks about how we, you know, we create a living by what we get, but also how we create a life by what we give. And it's what we give in these moments. And I truly believe, David, that everything I've ever been through in my life, I've been gathering experiences to enable me to be in the position I am to give back every single day to those people that I work with, whether they're my adult clients, my adolescent clients, my child clients, my children, my family, you know, my nephew, my sisters, you know, whoever.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really about doing what we can to facilitate that kind of insight, you know, to where a person can really open their mind to see what is there, you know, a new way of living, a new way of life that they can, you know, they can embrace and have the intention, you know, to do something, have the purpose, the meaning, the engagement. And when they've got the intention, they've got the meaning, they've got the freedom to think, you know, in that kind of limitless way. Because the way I see it, David, you know, there are no limits. We are our own limit. Sky's not even the limit. Who even said that anyway? Do you know what I mean? It's just another way of kind of like putting a ceiling on something when there isn't. You know, we construct our own environments, you know. So let's construct something that's meaningful, that's powerful, that's open, you know, full of opportunity, abundant in richness, just everything. I could go on for ages, but let me hand it back to you.
No, that is beautiful, and I'm so glad you're doing the Kickstart course, because I will put a link in the notes here for people who want to go do it. Pete Cohen's Kickstart course is phenomenal. I've actually done it a couple of times, and then I went on to join his elite program.
Okay.
And it has been a monumental game changer for me. And that, so when you were talking about the future self, I've actually written letters to my former self from my future self. And, you know, it's been very empowering, because if the person who I was 5 years ago hadn't made that choice to turn his life around, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now. I wouldn't be the person that I am now. So I am constantly grateful for the person who I was back then, who had the courage to get out of his comfort zone, to, you know, because I think that was the problem for my depression. I was comfortable in that mode. I was comfortable where I was, and I was scared to actually take the step to do something until I actually took that first step. And then the second step followed, and the third step, and then it compounded and rolled and grew, and boom, 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 every day, day in, day out, putting in the work. And I tell you, the one thing I worked on the most, and I know you've got some thoughts on this, but it's the habits that we do, day in, day out. And we've got those ones that are bad for us, and now I work on the ones that are beneficial to me. I introduce new habits that I know that are going to benefit me.
Okay.
When I first started, you know, it's like journaling, letting my feelings out, letting everything flow. You know, taking in the positivity, reading positive material, finding that guidance from people like Wayne Dyer and Jim Rohn, and, you know, all those great people that had those just nuggets. I was looking for nuggets, those little sound bites that I knew that I could implement into my own life. So yeah, for me, erasing those old habits and removing that old self, I guess, from me, that has been key for me in my development. Okay. So, you know, what are your views on changing these habits and growing that way?
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. God, man, look, you're talking to somebody who was dependent on like cannabis for like, well, I smoked my first joint, let's say, when I was around 15, I reckon. 14, 15 must have been then. And I smoked my last one when I was 38. So I pretty much smoked every day for like, certainly the latter part of the rest of my teens, all of my 20s, most of my 30s. So no, I get that. But, you know, my routine back then was wake up and roll a joint. Before I even got out of bed, I was literally reaching for the Rizla and I was rolling a joint to get out of bed. You know, I remember like I was working in East London at the time, and I was living in Watford, and I smoked literally 3 joints before I even got to work. Do you know what I mean? It's horrendous. But, you know, like we talk about this process of transformation, we talk about this opportunity to transcend. And I know for me where I am now, it's like, what the hell was I even doing? You know, you talked about your alcoholism and, you know, the behaviors and the habits and the routines that we get into when we're in this state of dependence. It's like, what the, you know, what were we even thinking? What were we doing? But at the moment, we believed that we were doing what we thought was the right thing to do. And again, it comes back to that thought in the moment that drives us. You know, this is where, for me, thoughts is the most powerful thing and the most beautiful thing as well, because, you know, our thoughts can prove to be, you know, great servants as well, but they can also be horrid masters. And Michael Neal talks about this in his book, The Inside Out Revolution. And that for me was a game changer. And that was something that helped me to sort of see the world as it needs to be, because I had to assume the opposite. You know, when I first came into this process of personal development, when I really wanted to evoke change in myself, it was around 2010, 2011. And that's when I stopped smoking cigarettes. Okay, so I went to see Alan Carr. I don't know if you know him or of him.
The comedian?
No, that's what people think, yeah. But Alan Carr is like, he has a program called The Easy Way to Stop Smoking. Okay, so he has a book. Many people have read the book. You know, long story short, the book didn't work. Went on the course, done the course, one day, never smoked since. Tobacco. And I met a chap there called Crispin Hay, who still then has become a very, very close friend. But Crispin introduced me to something called the 3 principles. I don't know if you've ever heard of the 3Ps. So the 3Ps is a very vibrant community in which we understand the three principles being mind, consciousness, and thought. Okay, and what I do is I have always gravitated towards that single paradigm of thought, knowing that it's that thought in the moment, which is that single most, it's probably the best ever variable there is for me guiding myself in the way that I know I need to go. And that's where my routine comes from. That's where my habits now come from. It's from that thought in the moment where I know I can choose whether or not I wake up in the morning and have a spliff, or I wake up in the morning and I don't. It all comes down to that thought in the moment. So how can my thoughts serve me? So I can fast forward to the end of that film to know what it would look like right now if I woke up and had a joint. And now I know that's not a place I want to go. So I can have that I can have the benefit of hindsight to have that power of insight to know it's not where I want to go. So when I wake up in the morning now, I come downstairs, I boil the kettle, I have my hot water and lemon. Yeah. Some people might have their oregano gold. For me, I have that later on in the day. I have the green tea and I have the red tea. I'm not a coffee drinker. My daughter has the coffee, so thanks again, Pete, for that. But that's my morning routine because I know what serves me. I'm listening to myself enough to be able to serve myself. And when we think about that serving ourselves, is that act of self-service. So I'm doing what I need to do. My morning routine, I wake up, I have my hot water and lemon, I get myself ready, I read my Promise of a New Day book, which for many people they might know, they might not know about. It's like a daily reading. There's many books out there like that, but it gives me context, it gives me perspective. Then I go about my day. I also like to train as well, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. When I leave here now, I'm going to head to the gym. For me, it's about self-care as well, how I can care for myself, how I'm listening to myself enough, not only to serve myself, but to care for myself. So I know that my children aren't here this weekend. It's a weekend where I'm going to spend, doing a few things that I need to do. And that's my routine. So I'm able to exchange, and I have exchanged harmful and unhelpful behaviors for more healthy and helpful ones. Do you know what I mean? So for me, that's a fair exchange. And this is what a relationships are all about. And I'm not talking about the relationships I have with external people. I'm talking about the relationships I have with this internal person, myself. Because the best relationship I can have is the one I have with myself. And more deeper than that is the one I have with my thoughts, which is why I was bringing in the whole world about 3Ps, because it helped me to understand the very nature of thought in that moment and how it can either help me, guide me, or kind of distract me and master me. And that's not what I want. I don't want to be mastered by my thoughts, because I know where I've been when I have been in that hole, in that place where it's very, very dark and lonely. And like you, David, and many other people listening, who have suffered from dependence or addiction or any sort of compulsivity, we've worked hard on ourselves to get us back to a place of equilibrium. So where we can be mindful of our past and be humbled by how far we've come, we can be grateful in this moment right now to be fascinated by how much more there is still yet to discover. And I truly believe the best is yet to come for me. I truly believe that. I haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg. And I know so far on my journey in recovery, because again, recovery for me is not just about stopping using a substance. It's not just solely confined to drugs or alcohol. For me, recovery is about recovery of the person. So whether you've been divorced, whether you've lost a partner, lost a parent, whatever, we are all in that state and that need of repair. So this is why I don't use that word rock bottom, because I don't ever feel that we are. And I've thought I was at rock bottom, quote unquote, one day in time. But since then on my journey, I've used a language which is different. And this is where my mindset has changed with the language that I now use. I don't see, I see some languages limiting, and I don't want to be limited by a word, because it's that one word that can make all the difference. For example, Coke or cake, right? It's that one letter that makes all the difference. Now, I know I was quite pertinent to a line or two growing up, right? But now I'm much more aligned with cake, so I've swapped, and one of my friends, they said to me the other week, she goes, "Oh my God, Thomas, so you've literally just changed one thing, and see how that word there's just has a different context, a different meaning. That one letter just makes all the difference." And I'm like, right, so what's the one thing in your life that can make a difference for you? Do you know what I mean? And they was like, wow. I'm like, there you go. So you've given me something, I've given you something. This is the power of connection. This is the power of our minds. This is the power of a relationship where we are having a fair exchange. You're sharing something with me, I'm feeding something back to you. And this is what it's about. This is how our mindset changes. This is how our routine changes. This is how, like Dyer talks about, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So what are we putting in to give out? You know, you spoke the other week, and I love what you said, because I so aligned with this. You talked about ourselves being like an emotional bank account, right? And that if we're not investing, when we go to withdraw, what's it going to say?
Insufficient funds.
Right. I love that. I love that. And that's why I had to put my hand up and come in and say, yes, David, I love that. Because it's true. It's true. Yeah. We're going to be depleted. We're not going to have anything in reserve. We're not going to have nothing there. So that, for me, David, is how, you know, we can really, you know, set, I call it that word mindset, right? Mindset. So what is your mindset on? I love breaking words up and flipping around. So what is your mind actually set on? Is it set on change, or is it set on not changing? It's your choice. That's the choice we have. That's the freedom we have, is to be more than we know we can be, to keep evolving, to keep growing. So it's about extending our capabilities. It's about stretching ourselves developmentally. And just one more thing, Patty Nabrowski, who we all know and love, you know, when she turned 50, I don't know if you know this, but she said she wanted to try 50 new things this year.
Oh, what a great idea.
Right. So I turned 46 this year in October. And one of the things I did for my birthday, I jumped out of an aeroplane. Oh. Right. And I wanted to push myself to my limit, like, you know, and even like think about what haven't I done yet? What in this moment would be like my ceiling if I had to think of like going beyond that? Because I don't believe that we have limits. I believe that we are limitless in that respect, and we can think limitlessly, we can live limitlessly. So when I did that parachute jump, like, not only did my mind open, like I said, but my world opened as well. And that's where a lot of my thinking comes, is when I'm in that space of freedom, where I'm not limited, I'm not confined, I'm not restricted. And I'm quite an existentialist in that way. But what Patty said, I loved. So I was like, right, I'm 46 this year. I want to do 46 new things. My daughter, my eldest, has just turned 15 in the half term. So I was like, all right, Fleur, this year, 15 new things. What are you going to do? How can I help you to do it? So when we, as I said, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. So let's really think about our mind. What is our mind set on, changing or not changing? What can we do to elicit, to evoke these feelings, these emotions, these behaviors? You know, because it's these actions that we take which turn into behaviors. These behaviors turn into emotions. These emotions then we attach to, because we know that they are doing something for us rather than nothing for us. You know, so that's where I'm kind of going with the whole routine, the whole mindset, changing the way you look at things, being more than you can be, doing more than you kind of ever thought you could. So yeah, that's kind of that.
Thomas, I couldn't agree with you more. Choices, you know, we have choices every day. And I think this podcast could go on forever, because we're going to have to do a second episode at some point, because there's so much I could come and say to you, but I think we should wrap it up for today. But Thomas, where can people find you, and where can they get to talk to you as much as I have? Because I'm loving this conversation.
I know, and I love it too. And I love when we're in the rooms together. It's it's always inspiring. It's always insightful. It's always empowering. So where can people get hold of me? So if people are listening via Clubhouse, when they're hearing this on that platform, then you can go to my Clubhouse link, Thomas Brosnan. You know, you can message me on there on the back channel. You can go to my Instagram account, which is Thought-Based Therapy, all one word. My website, thoughtbasedtherapy.com, is just a web page. So it would just have my contact details on there. That whole, you know, domain on the web is under construction at the moment. So I guess, you know, there would be some places, my professional therapeutic page, the BACP, British Association for Counsellors and Psychotherapists. People can visit me there, or just Google Thomas Brosnan Therapist, and there'll be a whole host of things that will come up there where they can find me.
Oh, that's awesome. And people, please get in contact with Thomas, because he is awesome. I love talking to Thomas. I love it when we're in clubhouse rooms together. We have the same mindset or set of minds.
Yeah.
So, Thomas, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me today. Let's do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome. This has been Positivity Rocks. My guest has been Thomas Brosnan. We will catch you on the very next episode. Have a great day.